Hello and welcome. We are here to deliver the critical information that you have needed, that perhaps you didn't even know that you needed, which is how do I set up a new project in Cursor to maximize the smooth, easy rolling nature of Cursor that we can squeeze out of the first few bits of the project before we end up in development hell. We all know that AI leads to development hell. We all know that we can get a lot of mileage. So one, I'm going to extend the mileage with proper product setup. Product requirement document. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But we're going to do the tips and tricks for starting the project, for keeping it going with minimal friction, and ways to avoid ending up in development hell. Can we prevent that entirely if we are vibe coding, if we are going hard with Cursor? No. Can we figure out if we should be writing the file into a completely errant directory before it's too late? Yeah, definitely. We can even identify whether or not we're violating some critical separation of concerns, and then back the AI up a little bit. So it all begins with a product requirement document. And I do this in 3 phases. People talk about this in terms of the planning phase, and some editors like RuCode will, in fact, have a planning mode. We're going to do this in a very specific way that I haven't seen anywhere else. In some capacities, I am relying on the shoulders of giants. I think I've seen several of the piecemeal components. I'm talking about 3 individual kinds of prompts and documents I'm going to generate for the editor. I have tried basically everything from every video on YouTube about how to use Cursor effectively for the past 4 or 5 months. I guess 6 months now, geez. Some don't work. Some help a lot. Some need to be tweaked and loved upon in a very special way. So we have a new project. It's called Access. What an amazing name for a project. Without revealing proprietary details, I don't know what else to call it, but the premise is right up here. Just like most prompt engineering courses, we want to put the goal up top, and then we're going to start, because it's a brand new Greenfield project, lay out the tech stack. Obviously, I've already done this. This document is not complete yet. And then we are going to describe some caveats, some warnings, some specific things that definitely should be noted about this particular project. The details of this project, other than the fact that it's in Next and Supabase and Prisma and Tailwind, these are the ideal stack for AI right now. Maybe, probably. At the very least, we all know that the LLMs love these languages. So this stack is selected specifically because I will get more mileage out of my vibe coding. And then further caveats down here. And then finally, I'm going to leave with a couple of user stories or examples, which are not written yet. So I am going to display these subscriptions. We're going to promote products based on this. Okay. Now, I could add the little subheaders to these, but what you'll find out is that this basic product requirement document is ultimately going to be expanded upon and then manipulated at least 2 more times prior to plugging this in the Cursor. So what do we want? We want a user story. A user has a subscription to sites A, B, and C. They log in via Supabase. How about we put it another way? They are logged in via Supabase to one such site, but are unaware of their other subscriptions. So we're trying to basically make a centralized payment portal across multiple subscription sites. One such site unaware of their other subscriptions until they view their credit card. They log into our site. I'm not going to give a URL, even though I'd like to, but for proprietary information, I have to avoid that. They log into our site and see subscriptions A, B, and C presented as simple cards with expandable details as to their subscriptions benefits. Let's get over here. Let's get this. Let's get that. When clicking into a card, they see the options to cancel, change payment. What else do we want to be able to do? Or access the subscriptions benefits. When canceling subscription, blah blah blah, unaware of the subscriptions, blah 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 blah. When canceling their subscription, and let's give it a little idea. So we're interfacing with multiple sites. The payments are going to be complex. The goal of the project is actually to centralize payments across these multiple services, which are right now piecemeal and unpleasant and makes for a difficult user experience, as well as billing issues. Again, we're billing across about 9 different accounts. I do have a Miro board where we have mapped this out to have a stronger idea of exactly what we're going to be doing. Can't really show that because it's a real project. Oopsie. But we are using this Next.js site as a custom UI and front end to be able to monitor, view, cancel all of these various subsites, as well as provide a series of best practice features in checkout. One of the things that we will be doing is being able to have all new subscriptions go through Stripe checkout for trust reasons and also for simplicity, as well as porting the old subscriptions. Now that could be done through a migration, or it could be done through API calls back to the respective sites. And in some cases, I will probably have to use the latter approach. So I want to give it a little preview of the complexity that entails. So if you're not following along, I have thousands of people who are currently being billed for subscription payments across about a dozen different websites, and I may or may not be able to migrate all of that data to centralize the subscriptions. So in that case, I also need to be able to handle these legacy billing clients and have new billing clients sign up using Stripe checkout. Is that great in clarity? Is this a sexy project? Am I making a really cool app for, I don't know, it's like Tinder, but for dogs? Is that what I'm doing? No, this is pretty dry. This actually is a consumer-facing client, thus the thousands of people, but there we are. All right. When canceling their subscription, they receive an exit offer for 50% off. So I want to be able to do these best practice kinds of things via the Stripe. I'm going to nix this because it's too complicated for the moment, and I can augment that later. They cancel their subscription, calling back to a MemberPress site via the API and receiving webhook information that confirms that the subscription is canceled. Okay, that's a good basic user story. User story 2. And the whole reason to flesh these things out is to give, if you thought that you were lost with my meandering, peripatetic explanation of whatever the hell is going on here, imagine what the poor AI feels, right? And what if the AI has feelings? Apple says it doesn't think. I think that they feel. I think they have deep, heart-centered emotions. They're crushed by the weight of the complexity and the ultimately rambling, disjointed dialogue that I'm providing it. So the user story gives it a clear insight into, I should be able to do this, and then that does this. And the more cases and examples that we can give, obviously, if you have done any prompt engineering in the past, if you've ever used Cursor and you are aware that examples are powerful, they are probably the most important component, other than perhaps certain caveats. As Cursor begins to implement memory for public projects, which I really don't like that it's just public projects, I'm not going to use memory, I think the caveats may get diluted in their value because a lot of these caveats will be able to store within the individual project. But the examples are going to become even more important. In this case, our examples are simply the user stories. A new user without any subscriptions. wants to check out on subscription product C. They are sent from another web page to a Stripe checkout. They're sent from another web page to a Stripe checkout, and now I'm kind of wondering about my own flow. The other nice thing about the example is it forces me to evaluate this for myself. Can I send them the Stripe checkout prior to them creating a user? Technically, yes, and then I can use the Stripe webhooks to create the user afterwards on Supabase. And that is best practice, that is standard. So this is a completely nascent user. They're sent from another web page to a Stripe checkout. Then our site, our Next.js app. Again, I'm not using the domain name, unfortunately. The ideal would be using the domain name, very clearly naming the project. I think I have to do that up here. The project is called Access. What a horrible name. Hopefully we improve that in production. They are sent from another web page to Stripe checkout. Then our Next.js app receives a webhook and the user is then redirected to our app to create a Supabase user for both Access and let's change this up here too for clarity, right? Computers are good at anything. It's remembering variable names. This project is essentially a variable name. Then our Access app receives a webhook. The user is then redirected to our app to create a Supabase user for both Access and subscription product C. After the user is created, they are redirected to their new product. The user can navigate back to Access app from the subscription C website. Okay, so we have a couple of examples. If we look at the overall prompt, goal, we're titling it, and then we are giving it a tech stack, and now we're beginning to describe certain features and caveats. Finally, we end in examples. This is a good starter prompt, but when I have this, now I can develop this locally very easily. Let's see how that looks. That is currently a thing. Let's go over here. Let's go over here. Let's go over to web. Let's go over here. And we're in this, and voila. Like I said, like I promised, this is a Greenfield exploration. We do have an audience. We have a secret audience. Do you guys have any questions?
What's the password for the computer?
Yeah, do you have any questions? Nobody? Okay. Part of me is torn. Now we have to add a fucking cut. Let's see if I can pause. Feel free to chime in. All right, so there are no questions, but it has been told to me that we need slightly more stimulants. I think yohimbine is good if you have heart palpitations, to give you more heart palpitations. And as always, we are sponsored by Medigold. Medigold, over 33 servings, kosher, halal, GMO free. They are trying to genetically modify our gold to make our brains less good, to make the brains not as good as gooder. Medigold gets them right back. Oh, straight into the brain. Amazing. Impossible to program anything without gold nanoparticles in your brain. Okay, here we are. So now we have our very first prompt. We are going to take that first prompt. I also do not want to lose this prompt. I think I will. I'll put it on my other screen here. You can't see the other screen. That's fine. We put it in here. Now, what do I really want to do? And what model do I choose? So we can see that I'm in a naked directory. It's completely empty. I was going to ls. One, I'm on Windows, and two, there's no need to ls. All I have is my prompt. I'm going to generate several additional documents before I even start. I want you to scope out this project. I want you to scope out this project and write a to-do.md with very simple steps that a junior developer who has recently sustained a concussion could execute. So it is important to come up with a new medical crisis for every single time that you do this. Execute easily. Let's see what Claude does. Now, Claude 4, I, like you, dear viewer, am not super familiar with the capabilities of Claude 4 Opus because it is impossible to use because every single call to it times out or something stupid. I haven't had those issues with Sonnet. I am not a Claude 4 supremacist. I have been accused of such in the past, and I reject those allegations entirely. In fact, if anything, I'd still be Gemini 2.5 Pro supremacy, mainly for the context window. Right now, as we're writing documents, we really don't need to worry about the context window, so I'm curious to explore what Claude 4 has to offer. Again, I would like to use Opus. In theory, I would like to use the latest and greatest and most robust thinking model to be able to execute on this. That might be O3 Pro right now. I'm really doubtful. Because I'm skeptical of O3 Mini. Let's see what else we got. We have O3 Pro. We got O3. Note that we are on max mode. So that's an important thing to say here. One, when you start Cursor, if you are a complete newbie and you have no idea what the hell is going on, you will start on Auto. Auto is designed to make Cursor appear to be an inferior product that you would never spend money on because it's completely worthless. That's the only reason that we have Auto, right? It's just to ruin your user experience entirely. So do not use Auto. Do not trust Auto. Let's look at our file here. Project overview. Yep, more or less exactly what we had. Prisma, WordPress MemberPress APIs. I'm a little concerned. I almost want to say third party. I'll add external. And hopefully it will not try to make me a WordPress site. That is a reason to be concerned. Let's accept this. Create install Next.js with TypeScript, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. Create Prisma, super, blah, 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 blah. Create a new Supabase project, blah, blah, blah. Yep, that's all good. Login page, sign up, Supabase auth hooks. Implement authentication middleware for protected routes. Yep. Add logout functionality. Now, the hardest thing when viewing these documents is figuring out what it is not telling us. Everything that it is telling us is exactly correct. Database connection, Supabase, Postgres, yep. User data synchronization. Supabase user of the Prisma database, okay. Create subscription card, list, empty state component, no subscriptions. Yeah, that's good. This is actually quite thoughtful. The empty state, I think, traditionally would be left to its own devices. I'll give Claude 4 Sonnet a win there. Loading skeleton components, that's actually a very thoughtful thing that we can do specifically with Next.js, which I like. Dashboard data fetching. Now, as I'm looking through this, manage payment, test, it's captured everything that I asked it to. But what did I not ask it to do that I've forgotten about? What are we missing entirely? Product discovery and promotion. Yep, So it caught on to a little snippet feature that I added there. It was just probably 8 words, but it did add that as one of the basic things in the PRD. Testing quality assurance, security and performance, the SRF. Yeah, it's not a bad idea for something that's payment facing, right? Deployment and monitoring, yeah, whatever. And I love this format particularly. I wonder if this is in my cursor rules. I will show you my cursor rules in a second, but I do have it use these conventions everywhere that I can, which is whether or not it has done the thing or not, and to use these cute little emojis, particularly for completed and tested versus completed but not tested. Read carefully, blah, blah, blah. The only thing that I'm not seeing here is it didn't acknowledge the fact that our junior developer may have significant brain trauma. And that technically, after a head injury, you are supposed to be on rest and recovery in a dark room for 6 weeks. So I appreciate the hardcore capitalist mindset of Claude 4 Sonnet by driving this hapless worker onto the brink of death, ultimately, with no regard for their physical safety whatsoever. So that's fine. And in fact, it did do a very good job making simple steps. Let's go back to our documents and let's verify that I have not forgotten some kind of critical thing here. Okay. You know what? It is not including append, add, revise, and add to the document that we will be using shared components and helpers specifically for WordPress and MemberPress API calls. We need to add that the subscription sites will be objects in Prisma with data such as their webhook secrets and redirect URLs. What else do I want to have here? So these are dry concerns. Do not repeat yourself. The AI, and this is one of the pearls that you're here for. You've tolerated 22 minutes of rambling and insanity, all for this moment. The AI is really bad at reusing components and coming up with dry principled code all on its own. It is essential that we guide it wherever possible, particularly if we don't have a clear idea of what the entire project is. I will confess that I expect the unexpected with this project because it is payment processing. This is a payment processing page. If you've ever dealt with Stripe and if you've ever dealt with payments, yeah, this is going to be hell. So I don't know everything. I don't have the clearest vision of exactly what this project is. I'm not making a to-do list. And as it writes the code, as it sees it right now, if it doesn't understand absolutely everything about what the code will be doing within the context and the time that it is writing the code, if that makes sense to you, I hope it does, it is not going to be making components, reusable components, when in fact reusable components are key to the scalability and efficacy of this particular thing. So I want these subscription sites to be objects in Prisma. I want to store them in my database. We will have an admin section on the site for user management, subscription management, and what else is it going to do? Product CRUD. It must be simple and beautiful so that I have a lot of really mean jokes right now. The brain damage one, I always use that one, and so I have other ones, but they're really, really mean-spirited and cruel. So I'm trying to think so that a underqualified and deranged, criminally deranged deranged customer service rep can manage subscriptions from the admin backend. Admin UI. Revise to-dos, and then document everything so far as a PRD. So we have ultimately ended up with 3 separate documents, just like I promised. One is the initial prompt. The reason that it is on Google Drive is specifically because it's not lost, but it's all the way up there. I want to have that initial prompt on hand so that if I need to reprompt, I can reprompt. We used to do this a lot. Context windows have gotten better. A lot of things have improved. But I will reprompt the core premise of the site in pretty much every new Composer tab. We have created the to-do for the brain damaged junior developer who's going to work on this. And by the way, no slight to anyone. The junior developer is, of course, it's either Claude or Gemini, right? And then finally, we will end up with a PRD, which is a product requirement documentation, which will define the scope at the top level that will enable us to feed that into the context seamlessly to prevent scope creep from Claude or Gemini. Now, Gemini is actually a lot better about scope creep. If you're familiar with, I think Sonnet 3.7 was really, really famous for just going absolutely overboard and having to do a lot of things that you didn't ask it to do. Okay. So we're cooking here, and we're appending little bits here about, okay, it was giving us utility function. Now it's talking about helper functions and classes. That's great. So I had actually missed that, and just a little bit more information here. Yeah, here's our schema. Site, subscription, product, payment. We're getting some good juice here. Let's see. Now it's making the PRD. The other problem here, particularly with the Claude models, is it is prone to, for long write processes and tool calls, it could hang and time out. So we want to avoid large writes. And one solution is to use what might be an inferior model, Gemini in this case. It's hard to believe that Gemini is an inferior model, if I'm being honest with you, but use Gemini to be able to write correctly. So exactly what I said would happen happened. We'll hit resume. We'll give it one more shot. Seems I interrupted the tool call. Yeah? You think so? You think I interrupted the tool call? How dare you, Claude? How dare you? It's trying to report me to PETA. All right. Let's accept everything, get the green out of there. Now this to-do has gotten pretty big. With the 200K input window items, or LLMs, which is Claude. Let's see what they're telling me. So yeah, 200K context, 200K, 200K, 200K. These are all the Claudes. 200K. 1 mil. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. That's nice. That's a little bit different. 1 mil. Oh, 4.1 gives us 1 mil. I forgot about that. Which is great, but it's not great at coding. And everything is basically 200K. This is partly an artifact of Cursor. So we are on Max, and we are only ever going to use Max. If we were off Max, it would even take Gemini down to 200K. The important thing to know is, if the context window is 200K, so look at this, absolute rubbish. It is going to write the PRD. It is going to start silently forgetting things. And as far as I'm aware, Cursor gives you the little thing that says, hey, I think you should start a new Composer tab after about the 200K input token limit has been exhausted. I don't think it applies for Gemini. Now, maybe after the 1.0 update that has changed, but the 1 million context window of Gemini definitely is still remembering everything that it's ever done from the beginning, well after Cursor starts nagging me in the bottom right corner here. It hasn't happened yet to start a new context window. The other thing that I wanted to add is that with 200K input tokens, we seem to cap out on files that are over about 500 to 1,000 lines of code. Particularly with reading and writing and tool calls, Cursor really stutters and struggles. And it may be the LLM, it may be the tool calling protocol, it may be all kinds of things. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, if you have a file with 2,000 lines, I've had this happen for like Astro sites where you're writing a lot of static HTML and stuff like that. It loses the ability to read write, and it is a nightmare. So the fact that the to-do is about 368, it's a little bit pushing it for a to-do because it is going to edit and append to the to-do, but it is fine. It's still permissible for all the models, and obviously Gemini can handle that, no problem. Let's go to the PRD. Access to centralized platform goals and objectives, unify, increase product discovery, centralized administration, automate workflows. Absolutely. And here's the target audience. User story 1, user story 2, and made a new user story for the admin. God bless you, Gemini. Oh, what a sweetheart. Okay. System and backend features, blah, blah, blah. Technical stack, front end, back end, blah, 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 blah. Yes, external. I care that this says external. I really wanted not to try to make a WordPress site. And remember, even if it's not trying to make a WordPress site now, it could start doing goofy stuff at any moment. These documents, the PRD is usually to restrict scope. And you can see that here. This is how these documents have been used for dev teams for a long time. And to define business outcomes attached to the technical outcomes, which I think has done a great job of that. The to-do is to give clear and concise instructions in the immediate term. And that's really cool. We need to have this is our makeshift version of memory for the AI as it goes through different context windows. The moment I hit plus up here, I got cloud now. The moment I hit plus up here, all the context of what we're doing is lost. It's gone. It is absolutely cooked. And sure, right now we have 2 tiny files. The moment that we have any more than 2 tiny files, it's not even going to bother reading things. It's going to look at the directory structure and maybe try to read some specific context. And to be fair, this is like hiring a new junior developer every single time that you start a new context window, right? And if a junior developer came into the project and had 25 seconds to make 1,000 lines of code edits to update the CRUD on this specific thing, they would also only read the very specific documents. A lot of what we need to do with Cursor is not only to give it the context of the code base, which is difficult because of the input tokens. Even for Gemini, it gets difficult at some point. It will for this project as well. It is to give it the context of the business objectives of the project as a whole, which is why we have the PRD. Great. So we have everything we need here. We've already switched to Gemini. Fun fact, Gemini has 1 million tokens. It is entering all the prior conversation that I've had so far in this composer window, probably when I make a new request. What if I switched from a long context window conversation from Gemini, where it is definitely ingesting everything, back to Claude, where it's only going to be able to ingest 200K tokens? Right now, we can probably still be within 200K tokens. Cursor may be in the middleman. It may be summarizing the prior changes. It may be performing certain things like here are the files we read wrote to, etc., etc. But I don't really know what would happen if I switch back the model to Claude and we've already exceeded the input token limit. I have done that in the past. It is inadvisable. It is much better to, once we've switched to Gemini, keep sticking with Gemini until we hit the plus sign. We haven't done too much here yet, so I'm not going to start the new context window. All this focus on the context window itself is absolutely essential because every time that we make a new composer, we basically, the ideal is that one composer context tab is going to cover everything that we would in a single bug fix or feature branch. So if I am doing multiple bug fixes or feature branches in the same context window, again, if you're not aware, I hit this at any time and then all the history disappears, right? If I am combining multiple things, as is often the temptation, especially if it one-shots something, but then I get stuck midway into breaking edits that have not resolved my bug or have not added my feature, I will still need to make a new context window because it's forgetting what it has done in the past, but it is going to lose all context of the recent changes that broke the project. Therefore, it's not going to be able to discover and fix the changes that we made in the past. This is the origin of like 90% of the issues that we have at AI as the context gets exceeded and as the project gets bigger. It's because we tried to do a thing, and we tried to do that thing with Composer for long enough that eventually we have to switch context, and when we switch context, it takes a fresh new approach, which might actually solve the problem. And then when you solve the problem, you make your git commit, but now the problem is we have an entire dead line of code. Sometimes these are directories, sometimes these are functions within a particular code, and that will not be discovered for 150 years. There are things like NIP, KNIP, that can attempt to find unused functions in JavaScript. That's great, but you don't want to find yourself in that situation to begin with. So, oh, fuck. I am late.